rather than having a charge on what is there and feeling that somehow we have to manipulate or cut out, in the case of a tumor, or change, hammer the physical reality into submission. What they're doing is acknowledging that moment, that example, and they're changing it on the level of what we would call the quantum blueprint. They're feeling the feeling as if another possibility has occurred, and in doing so, allowing that possibility to replace the one that exists without judging the one that exists. I was an aerospace engineer in Denver, Colorado during the last years of the Cold War, the 1980s, and it was when the famous brown cloud was inundating Denver, and we couldn't all drive on the same days. We had to carpool on different days. And one day I went to an engineer friend's house to do my carpool for that week, and I got there a little early. And I'd never been to his house before, and I said, "Can I use your bathroom?" And I went in there, and he had little Post-it notes of affirmations all over the bathroom, and it said, "My perfect mate is manifesting for me now. My perfect mate is manifesting for me now." We got in his car, and he had little Post-it notes all over the dashboard and the rearview mirror. "My perfect mate is manifesting for me now." And of course, I knew what his office looked like, and it was the same way. He had them all over the walls in the CRT. I said, "Does this affirmation work for you?" He said, "Nah." He said, "It never does." And I said, "Why do you think that is?" And he said, well, look at me. Who'd want to be with somebody like me? I'm just an engineer, you know. He had a very low self-esteem about himself. And I began to think about the way that he was applying those affirmations, and other people have applied them very successfully. And what I found the difference was, for him, it was a thought process that never went beyond what was happening in his mind, in his own picturing, his own self-esteem. And the thought is important. The ancients are very clear about this in the Sanskrit text. They tell us that the thought is the image of the quantum possibility. So in other words, in the realm of all possibilities, everything already exists. My friend's perfect relationship and the worst one he'll ever have. The lightest of the light, the darkest of the dark. Our greatest healing and our greatest suffering, they're already there. And what they invite us to do in these ancient traditions is to reach into those possibilities with our mind. This is the power of the mind. And isolate, we lock in one of those possibilities. So now we have taken it and identified it. However, to bring it into this world, to breathe life into that possibility, is the power of human emotion, our love for that possibility, or our fear of that possibility. Either one will work. To bring that quantum possibility into the particle reality of our everyday lives. We don't have to know that. It sounds very technical. We just have a feeling. But this is the science of, appears to be the science of how these things are working. So this is why our self-esteem is so important. When we feel, when my engineer friend felt that, why would anybody want to be with me, is what he said to me. The affirmation for him was an empty affirmation. It was a thought that had no energy to invite it into this world. And an example of just the opposite of that is I know of other people who have simply made a list of all of the attributes of a perfect partner in life, because this is what many people, I'm using as an example. It works in healing, it works in peace, but we're talking about relationships. They make a list of all those attributes, and then they come from the place that relationship is already happening. What is their life like? How is their life different now that perfect partner is there? How is their evening different? How do they spend their time differently? How do they feel when they wake up in the morning and share their lives with someone? And it's those feelings that they live throughout the day. It's not something you sit down and do for a minute and then you get up and walk away. Rather, it's something that we become. We live our lives as if these experiences have already happened, and in that way we invite them into our lives, and they happen frighteningly quickly for some people. It's amazing. I know people that haven't finished their list, and they go out for lunch or a cup of coffee while they're making the list, and the person that just brought them their lunch is the person that's on that list, and they fall in love and they're married 20 years later. I know people that's happened to. So it's about clarity. It's about specificity. It's about being personal. Being very clear that these are personal desires. Scientifically, it appears that this field, the divine matrix, it is a mirror and a bridge between our inner and our outer worlds. And it can only give us what we give it to work with. And the interesting thing is that we have been conditioned